recording now, and we're starting on a very sad note. Can you all hear me? Raise your hands if you can hear me. Oh, you can hear me. Okay, thank you. Right. I was rather worried then. Okay. We start off on a very sad note. All the members may remember a Charlie Johnson from Blackheath, Birmingham, who passed away 2 weeks ago at the age of 96. He was born in Blackheath way back in 1924. He'd been a member of the Communist Party for almost 80 years, and he took part in peace campaigns, shop stewards movements, tenants associations, all based around Blackheath and the Black Country area. And with a stalwart of the Trades Council many, many years ago. And unfortunately, like many comrades, no longer with us. So if we can have a moment's silence, please, for Charlie Johnson. Okay. Thank you. Details of his funeral will be sent to the delegates in due course. Our first speaker tonight will be Richie Venton from Ikea in Glasgow. As many of you know, Richie was sacked by the Ikea management for defending workers' rights, and especially defending members of staff who were laid off due to the coronavirus and the subsequent loss of wages, loss of earnings. He fought to defend them and restore their wages for them. And unfortunately, Richie got the sack for it. Also, since the sacking, Ikea have introduced worse cutbacks for their own workforce. Okay. Without any further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Richie Venton from Glasgow. Thank you. Richie?
Well, thanks very much, Ian, and thanks, brothers, sisters, and comrades, for the invitation. It feels like at least half a lifetime ago since the last spoke in Birmingham in a meeting. So this new technology is a gift in some respects, although I hate speaking to a screen instead of to people. As Ian's indicated or hinted, there's some legal restraints on some of the detail I can talk about in terms of my own situation. But I think, like millions of others, we've all just lived through the COVID-19 college of harsh lessons and simple, profound conclusions that trade unionists need to absorb and act upon. And let me refer to a few of them because it does relate to my situation. First of all, this myth that we're all in it together. The reality is, of course, that in just the space of 3 months during the lockdown, the world's billionaires increased their wealth by over a quarter, by 27.5% to be exact. In contrast, working people, even when they were put on furlough, lost usually 20% of their wages. Up until the backlash over the last couple of weeks, they faced a 33% cut to their wages. And in some cases, including because of the incompetence and bungling by Boris and his upper class buffoons, they've lost 100% of their wages by being made redundant. So no, we're not all in this together. There's a class divide that's, if anything, thrown into high relief by events such as a pandemic, just as the case is during things like war, even though the gospel being preached is the opposite, that we're all together regardless of what class we're from. It's the opposite. Secondly, there is such a thing as a working class, something that some people poo-pooed as an idea for many years. It was the workers in the likes of healthcare, retail, bin collections, utilities, postal services, and hosts of others who have helped keep society ticking over during the worst pandemic in a century. It wasn't the spivs, the speculators, the billionaires, or the company chief executives. Also, contrary to what Theresa May said a couple of years ago, when she was being asked for investment money to invest in things like the health service, there is a magic money tree. And we've seen yet another branch of it being shaken to bail out businesses in the last 24 hours in terms of the extension of the furlough scheme up until March at least. Also, something that is close to the case I've been involved in, poverty kills, a brutal reality I think we need to grasp. That was the case before the pandemic and certainly during it. Because before the pandemic, to use just one example, here in Glasgow, we've got two neighbouring districts. One's called Drumchapel, which is like, in your language, a housing estate. In Scotland, they're called a scheme. And across the road, literally, a leafier suburb called Bearsden. Men in Drumchapel, on average, live 11 years less than men in Bearsden. In the case of women, it's 8 years less. And of course, one of the root causes of that is the way in which things like stress, insecurity, lack of control over your job, the insecurity of having a job, the poverty benefits if you land in reliance upon them, the cuts to health and safety at work, and umpteen other causes lead to a stunting of the quality of life, but also quite often a shortening of the life that working class people otherwise could live. And we've seen, for example, years of refusal by the government to invest in the health service, in things like PPE, has led to the crisis being exaggerated and exacerbated, I should say, during the pandemic, where, for instance, their fear of not having the proper equipment and staff levels in the health service led them to driving elderly patients out of wards into care homes and quite often spreading the disease, leading to the carnage of the care homes. There's been a cruel kind of cull of older people during this pandemic. And that's despite the warnings. For example, in 2017, in June, the same month that the Tories waved their order papers in Parliament, celebrating their defeat of the idea of a pay rise for nurses and firefighters, they also refused point blank to agree to investment in PPE equipment for frontline healthcare staff, even though one of the exercises, I think it was Cygnus, recommended that was necessary. And of course, one of the things still not quantified is how many workers have died, or in other cases, infected more vulnerable relatives and people because they could not afford to be off sick to recover. Because Britain's sick pay scheme is an international scandal. It's an exercise in criminal negligence, as far as I'm concerned. Statutory sick pay of £95 a week in this country compares to an average of £245 across Europe as a whole. It's less than 20% the average wage, whereas the European average is 65%. And in several countries, Germany, Norway, and others, it's 100% of your wages when you go off sick for quite an extensive period. It's really a case where Britain is the sick man of capitalist Europe, making working class people sicker by not providing decent and adequate sick pay. On top of which, by the way, as you all know, I'm sure, 2 million workers are excluded from even so-called statutory sick pay because they're below the lower earnings threshold of 120 a week. On top of which, Britain's one of only 4 countries in the world that excludes the entire and growing self-employed population from getting any form of state sick pay. So, throughout the pandemic, I have consistently argued with my own employer at the time, but others as well, that workers should receive 100% of their average wages if they're off sick, specifically in the case of COVID-19, for example. And why is that my belief? Well, it's because if people are forced into a situation where company sick benefit is lower than their wages in the first place, or if company sick benefit means that they're disqualified because they've been off too often with some underlying health condition previously, and they're landed on £95 a week, what will the consequence of that be? Well, I think we all know you don't have to be a genius. It means people quite often will take risks to their own health and that of other people by dragging themselves into work, because the harsh and brutal choice they face is either financial ruin, trying to exist on 95 a week, or ruination of their health by going into work anyway, infecting others in the process. And even companies with profits that run into not just millions but billions have refused to dip into their ample resources and reserves to protect workers' lives during the likes of this pandemic. Care homes, that definitely applies to. I know several care home workers who are absolutely stressed out at the thought of being tested because they couldn't afford to be found positive and put on 95 a week. Now, I have no regrets at standing up for a full average wage for every sick worker during the worst killer virus in 100 years. And I'm even more resolved now to combine with others, including yourselves, across the country or countries, the nations, in order to campaign for that very policy to apply, frankly, regardless of whether it's COVID-19 or not. Because I think any sickness should provide the safety net of full average wages for the worker affected. And there's plenty of companies could easily afford that. And then for the smaller businesses, if they're means tested, they're funding means testing the working class, how about means testing businesses? If they genuinely couldn't afford it, then obviously the state could provide that from taxation of the rich. And I've argued for that to apply to all workers. And I applied it on the basis of my own experience at work and a dose of common sense. But now we also have the science backing up, where there was a study done recently by behavioural scientists, including a woman, Susan Michie, you might have seen on telly, from the SAGE advisory group, which found that out of 31,000 people that did a survey of, only 11% of them actually stayed off for the full 14 days self-isolation. Why? Because they couldn't afford to be off. They couldn't afford to live on statutory sick pay. And now we face what you could call twin viruses, COVID-19 and capitalist recession, which the rich capitalist minority are determined to make ordinary working class people pay the price for. We see companies carrying out what I would describe as corporate thuggery of fire and rehire, British Airways, Centrica and others included. We have a company in Glasgow, a leisure and entertainment company called G1 Group, owned by a millionaire, who offered workers by email what he called the opportunity for 3 months unpaid leave. That was his wonderful, generous offer. We have pay freezes by various companies, include giants in retail. We have cuts to hours and pay. All of this in the richest, fifth richest economy on earth. And we're getting, I'm sure you encountered yourself, the revival of that obnoxious expression, well, you're lucky to have a job. You know, you might have to get a pay cut or cut to your hours and pay, but you're lucky to have a job. In other words, they're using the blunt instrument, the blunt weapon of mass unemployment and mass underemployment to try and drive and beat down wages, beat down the number of jobs, beat down health and safety and sick pay schemes, and beat down workers onto their knees. Well, it so happens I subscribe to the viewpoint of the Liverpool Irishman, great trade union leader Jim Larkin, when he said to a rally of workers during the Dublin lockout, the great only appear great because we are on our knees. Let us arise. As far as I'm concerned, we need to rise against that kind of punishment by big business in the midst of the pandemic and beyond, the way they try to make us pay for the recession that's looming. Because we need trade union leaders, national leaders included, to conclude, to get up off their knees and stop groveling in front of big business chiefs and mobilize members for a completely different, new, alternative normal, which is entirely different from what we have right now, where it includes things like full average wages if you're off sick, includes the demand, for instance, I believe, work or full wages, not a 33% cut, not a 20% cut, let alone 100, but full wages if they can't provide the work. And the last point I'll make is that when public money is being punted into businesses, public ownership, in my view, should follow in its wake. Rather than these subsidy junkies of big business having their profits subsidized, I think we should have a massive extension of public ownership to invest in things like the health service and national care service, things like transport, energy, construction, and so on, in order to bring about a society where the working class enjoy the wealth that working class people produce in the first place, with secure jobs, with what I would regard as a socialist Green New Deal based on public ownership of sectors like that, which is estimated by studies done in Scotland would create 150,000 jobs overnight in such sectors, green new jobs, which would be about 1.5 million across the United Kingdom. So that's the kind of future I'm determined to fight for, and I'm more resolved now than before I was sacked to conduct a struggle for that alongside people like yourselves in unity on behalf of the working class, where we defend workers' health, not big businesses' wealth. Thanks for listening.
Okay, if you can all unmute, please, and give a round of applause to Richie Venton. If you can unmute.
Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Well spoken.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now,
Hi, Chair. It's Graham speaking.
okay.
Richie.
Yes, we'd love
Richie.
to.
Sorry, that's me.
Okay. Ian, can you unmute yourself?
You're muted, Ian.
Oh, Graham, can you unmute? No. Okay. Anyone else?
For my sins on the executive of the BTUC, after being sacked 3 times. Richie, I'm with you, mate.
Thanks very much.
Can I speak, Ian?
Stuart, 1 moment, sir.
Ian, we're going to get Ali Musa speaking first before we go any further.
Well, we're
taking questions on this.
Ian, you've got to go. So can we have Ali Musa speak first?
Sorry, you can, if you want, you can finish this bit off, and then I'll come in as the next speaker, if that's okay. If that's okay with you, yeah.
That's how I understood it. You'll be the second speaker. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. No, I can wait. Yes, if you want to finish this off, it's fine. Thanks, Mr. Malik. But yeah.
Okay. Any more questions for Richie?
Yes, me, Ian. Can I just remind brothers and sisters that we did actually, the Trades Council was instrumental in organising 2 protests at the Ikea store, which is a massive place, on the 3rd of October and the 10th of October. The 10th of October was well attended with Walsall TUC's banner, Birmingham Unite Community, and we got several hundred leaflets. And we were planning a protest this Saturday, but of course there's no point having a protest this Saturday because the place is closed until the lockdown. Just to say, and obviously I don't think Ricky can answer this question, but the USDAW is a notoriously right-wing union, and we have a situation where a leading militant, elected convener of the store, has had virtually no backing from his union, no sort of campaign. Been a whole series of lobbies and protests around the country, Southampton TUC, Leeds TUC, Birmingham, but no involvement, and other than a sort of limited legal involvement. So I think that, I'm sure the leadership of the USDAW disagree with the politics of Richie, but that the basics of a trade union is to defend representatives who are victimized. And I think that we should demand the whole trade union movement defend Richie in this battle.
Trish.
Kathy Christian, yes. Catherine?
I was just agreeing with Stuart. That was what the thumbs up for was for. Okay.
Okay. Anyone else like to raise a
I think
question?
Trish Jones.
Thanks, Richie. That was fantastic speech.
Thank you.
It reminded me of Jackie Dash.
Sorry, I can't hear you, Trish. It cut out there.
You're not muted.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can all hear you.
It was a fantastic speech. Thank you. It reminded me of Jackie Dash. No, not a penny off the day, not a penny off the pay.
That's right.
I think the slogan, "Work for full wages," is a fantastic slogan for a campaign. I just wondered how far you'd organised that campaign.
Ian, I forgot to say that Richie has informed me that he's available to speak at trade union branches around the city.
One moment, Stuart. Yeah.
I think he's
Stuart, one
probably
moment.
going to speak at the Warsaw TUC.
One moment, Stuart, please. Trish? Have you finished, Trish?
Well, I finished with a question.
Okay.
I finished with a question for Richie. How far has the campaign got? Petitions throughout Ikea stores in the country. How far has the campaign got? And are you using full wages as a slogan?
Do you want me to answer, Ian, or?
Yeah, if you want to, yes. You have to.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on here. I can mute myself. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
I'll mute myself there. Well, put it this way, Trish, there's been a lot of trade unionists from right across the trade union movement. Stuart's already referred to the demonstrations in Birmingham. They've taken place in London, Southampton, Warrington, Leeds, Edinburgh, Glasgow. I hope I haven't left anywhere out, but there's been also protests outside Dublin, for example. But the demonstrations have been primarily on the demand for my reinstatement to my job and union position, but they've also all carried the material that demands that workers should get full pay, full average pay, if they're off sick. The wider demand for work or full wages, I've actually started campaigning on the streets of Glasgow in the last few weeks, not at Ikea as such, but in general, because I think that that helps to capture what's required in the face of, well, the growing recession. It's not a looming one, it started. And the fact that, for example, in retail, the sector that I'm elected to represent people in, 125,000 jobs have disappeared across Britain in retail just in the last 8 months of this year. And there's forecasts of another, I think I saw on the television tonight actually, a further, I can't remember, was it 30,000 or maybe it's far more, don't quote that figure. But so I think the idea of work or full wages, whether you're sick, whether you're put on shorter hours, whether you're facing redundancy, it's a unifying slogan, as you said, Trish, that something that the trade union movement could and should take up, because then it's saying, why should working people pay the price for the profiteers to continue to make their profits, quite often with subsidies, like I said, off the state? Because that, in one respect, is what the furlough scheme is. It's a profit subsidy. Of course, we demand it from the point of view of protecting jobs, but I think also the trade union movement should say that I don't mean corner shops, but that the bigger employers, if they're getting the money, they should also get the public ownership that goes with public funds. Why just fork out subsidies to business to continue profiteering, whilst at the same time cutting wages, cutting hours and wages, cutting jobs and so on, and frequently cutting their own company sick schemes to make them more punitive and restrictive and exclude more people. So it's only just begun as an overall slogan, but in terms of the specific campaign about my situation, then I suppose in a sense it's implicit, because it's arguing that if people are off sick with anything, then they should get their full average wages. And even the expression full average wages, I think, is very, very important, at least for a number of sectors of the economy. Retail is one of them, hospitality is another, because as you'll know, then people quite often work far more hours than their contract hours. And alongside that is another policy that I actually, it might sound a bit corny or boastful, this, but I actually invented and first wrote about in a book that I wrote, Break the Chains, which argues that instead of the casualization of work and the pitiful insecurity of 0 hour contracts and shorter contracts, that there should be a minimum working week guaranteed to workers. I put forward a few years ago the arguments for a 16-hour minimum week to be guaranteed to every worker who wants it. If they want to opt out and work less, then fine, but that there should be, if you like, legally guaranteed at least a 16-hour week as some kind of a decent, relatively secure income for part-timers. The 16 hours came about because at that time it related to some of the regulations for working tax credit. So that idea I argued for within my own union, USDAW, got adopted at our annual conference, and then in turn we took that into the TUC, the British TUC and the Scottish TUC, where it's been agreed as policy. Well, it's like a lot of policies, it needs to be taken off the shelf or the electronic filing system, dusted down and turned into the property of the mass of the membership and campaigned for. Because if you had that kind of thing, I think it'll catch on like wildfire if people knew about it in the workplaces, that instead of 0 hour contracts and all the horrible insecurity and poverty pay that goes with it, then at least a 16-hour week being guaranteed to everybody, unless, like I said, they want to opt out for fewer hours with their union rep beside them doing the opting out so that they're not pressured. I think that would be a massive weapon to combat insecure work, as well as the slogans for work or full wages, etc. So I hope that kind of answers some of the questions as best I'm legally able to.
Well, thanking Richie for his excellent contribution and reply to the questions. We now need to move on. Can we now have Ali Musa, please? Ali, can you unmute yourself? Okay, Ali.
Yeah, thanks, Ian and Naeem, for inviting me to give you an update regarding a dispute we're having with the employer. I'll just, because those of you who don't know me, I'm the chair for the Communication Workers Union Midlands region, and the majority of our members either work for Royal Mail or British Telecom. And I myself am a British Telecom engineer background and a full-time union official. Over the last few months, we've gone into a dispute with BT because they want to introduce compulsory redundancies and offshore work, and also change some of our terms and conditions. Now, as far as I can remember, and I have been a full-time union official for over 20 years.
Again, it's a very good meeting, 43 people here.
Stuart, can you mute yourself, please? Stuart?
I remember Stuart from many years ago, and Stuart is still Stuart. Yeah, so ever since I can remember, or in the history of the company since it became a private company in the 80s, there has never been wholesale compulsory redundancies announced. Over the years, we've managed to work with the employer, negotiate, and resolve any surplus resource issues through voluntary redundancies and leavers packages, or moving resource about, finding alternative work. We have fantastic policies in place which manage to resolve these problems, and there never has been an issue. But earlier this year, the company made a number of our members compulsory redundant, mainly office-based people, but it could even happen to the engineers once the super fiber optic network is all in place. Then they probably won't need that many engineers. So the company during COVID announced compulsory redundancies for many of our members. Now in March, obviously when we went into our first lockdown, every single BT employee was classed as an essential worker, and they were allowed to continue working, go to the workplace if they can, and especially the engineers, because throughout COVID, the products and the services we offer are actually in demand. And as you can imagine, that the more people that work from home, the better connections they want. So there isn't a single employee, and just going on to what Rick was saying, there isn't a single employee or a member of our union that's actually been furloughed. So the company is currently making the billions of pounds profit it is making. So there's no loss, but they are using COVID as a means or a way of reducing people's wages, and also to reduce the resource levels or the head count. And they're going to re-employ, which they no doubt they will do, re-employ people on cheaper wages. They are also trying to offshore a lot of office and desk-based work. And the majority of that work is trying to go to India at the moment, and that's what they're talking about. So when we look at the television screens and say, look, there's redundancies are being announced and companies are sort of, there's no demand for their services anymore or products, this is completely the opposite, because there is an absolute demand for the work that we're doing. And like I said, there's not a single employee BT has furloughed. But it's an excuse, it's an opportunity in what they see is how to sort of, make even more money. That's basically what we're up against. So we've tried every which way to negotiate with the employer to resolve these issues in a sensible way, but they are adamant that they'll have to make people compulsory redundant. So what we have done today is today is our second action day, and today we have launched our consultative ballot with all our BT members. The ballot will open. We actually launched it today and had an action day, so we tried to sort of contact members, talk to them. The difficulty we have, as you know, campaigning and trying to organize people is now different in COVID, because you can't actually go into the workplace. The majority of our members are all working from home. So you can't actually congregate to have meetings like we would normally do. So we're doing everything through Zoom calls and electronically and through text messages. So we did a whole campaign day today trying to motivate and talk to people and send them emails and WhatsApp messages and everything. The consultative ballot will open on the 19th of November and close on the 10th of December. And we're hoping to get an overwhelming majority. And between now and then, that's what we are doing as a union, trying to talk to our members and trying to make sure that they all vote in favour of action if the company does not back off regarding the compulsory redundancies and the fact that they want to reduce and water down our current terms and conditions, which I have to say, over the years, we have negotiated good terms and conditions. If you work for BT, you're generally well paid, and you have a good living. But they want to bring that right down, rock bottom, wages, where it's no point even working for a company where you can be classed as a skilled worker when you can probably get the similar wages working, elsewhere in an unskilled job. So that's what we're up against. Happy to answer any questions, but no doubt I probably would, as the dispute now develops and goes further, I'll probably come back to you and give you further reports, and any help that you can offer us will be much appreciated. Thank you, Ian.
Okay, thank you. If you can all unmute, please, and give a round of applause to Ali Musa. Okay. If you'd like to switch your videos on, and I can see who you are, can we have questions for Ali, please? Any questions? No? Don't be afraid to raise your hand. I won't shoot it off for you. Anyone like to raise a question?
Catherine's got a question.
Catherine? Okay, Catherine, yeah. Catherine,
Yeah.
Catherine?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Nobody was asking a question, so I'm going to make a contribution rather on what's just been said, is that I'm involved with a National Hazards campaign, and I have circulated something to say that there is someone who is going to be doing research into the situation of people working from home. I haven't got anything to just put up on the chat about it, I'm afraid. It is circulating around at different places, and I can provide it to be sent out to people by email, because it can be quite important. A lot of employers are absolutely doing nothing about the safety of workers at home. And I had my hand up just at the end. I left it to the last minute to contribute to the previous speaker as well, because people have died through having to go to work and not getting sick pay. And there's a film just out today from Real News, RWL News, which has got input from the Hazards campaign. Well, it's all from the Hazards campaign, which tells about the at least one of the people who have died. I think he was the one who died working as a cleaner for the Ministry of Defence in London. And it also has a lot of information about people who are organising about sick pay, and also some of the issues about health and safety at the moment that the government's not recognising, such as aerosol spread. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I do keep flipping between screens, so if you want to raise a question, make your hand really obvious so that I can see you. Now, can we have any other questions, please, for Ali Musa? No? Okay. No, I think Ali Musa has covered the subject rather well then. Okay, if you can thank Ali then for the excellent contribution and reply to the question, that'd be greatly appreciated. Don't forget to unmute yourselves in the process. Okay. Now, at this point of the proceedings, we now have to take the gory detail of our own annual elections. So, Naeem, would you like to go through the process, please?
Yeah, okay.
Now, but please, before Naeem starts, can you all mute yourselves, please? We want to make sure you all understand this perfectly. But remember, please, delegates only. Okay, Naeem?
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to share a screen with you, which explains the positions that are vacant. Okay, can you all see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, these are the following 8 positions. 10 of them are for the executive committee that are going to be vacant or need to be filled for 2021. We would like to fill each and every position because I think we are going, as a trade union movement, we're going through a very difficult period, and we would need everybody to help fight all the difficulties that we are going to face in terms of unemployment, in terms of reduction on our working conditions and everything else, that both our speakers, Ali Musa and Richie, has actually pointed out to us. So the procedure is that at today's meeting, I need to receive an email from anyone who wants to nominate anybody for any one of these positions. And you can self-nominate yourself. And if you send that to me in an email to btucsec@hotmail.com, I have put the email address on the chat line as well. And I think all of you would have received, or most of you would have received this as well before with the details. So if in that email you put down the person you're nominating, the position you're nominating him or her for, and their union branch, and also your union branch. The process is that everybody who is being nominated, his union branch must have paid the affiliation fee by the end of this year for her name to appear on the ballot paper for the position. If the ballot paper will only be issued where the position is being contested. First of all, for the position of the executive committee, we would elect first three would be women's position, and they will be elected. If there are only 3 women, then all 3 of them would be elected. If there are more, then the first 3 women would be elected first, and then the rest will be on the number of votes cast. So if you can send me an email, or you can actually put it on the chat line, but make sure you put your email address, your union branch, and also the person you're nominating, his or her union branch and email address if you can. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any nominations for tonight? And this will be carried forward to the elections in January. Right, so any nominations for president?
Yeah, Graham Fletcher. I nominate Ian Scott.
Graham, can you put that on the email?
Yeah.
I have done.
Okay.
Okay. So any other nominations for president?
I will second the president, Ian Scott, Mike Shakespeare.
Okay, thank you.
I will also like to propose...
One moment, please, one moment. Any further nominations to be carried forward to January for president? No. Secondly, any nominations tonight to be carried forward to January for vice president?
I propose Graham Fletcher, Mike Shakespeare.
Okay.
I'm proposing Melanie Cruz. This is David Bailey at UCU.
I, Cole Jones from UCU, will second Melanie Cruz's nomination for vice president.
Can you put all these nominations into email, please, as well?
I'm assuming the chat is okay instead of the email.
Chat is fine, yeah.
The point is, once we record that detail, it'll be carried forward to January's election campaign. Okay. So we have Melanie Cruz and Graham Fletcher for vice president. Any other nominations for vice president? No. Thirdly, secretary. Any nominations to be carried forward for secretary?
No, Marek.
And Malik. Okay.
No, Graham Fletcher.
Okay.
I'll second you.
Okay. Seconded, yeah. Okay, thank you. Any further nominations for secretary to be carried forward to January? Okay. Fourthly, treasurer. Any nominations, please, for treasurer?
I would like to propose...
One at a time, please.
Oh, I'm Sarah, but you can't see me. I nominate Stuart Richardson.
Okay.
I propose Darcy Luke.
I propose Trish Jones. And I've got a statement from Trish if you want me to read it out.
Please do.
Please, okay.
Right. I know Trish is having a few problems with her microphone, so I'll read her statement out. What she's saying is, I am pleased to accept the nomination of BTUC Treasurer. It's a role I am familiar with and have fulfilled in the past within other labour and trade union organisations. In addition to keeping clear online records of expenditure, I know it is important for delegates to receive regular updates on where their affiliation fees are being spent. So as well as an annual report, I would offer interim reports to delegate meetings in order to be completely accountable and transparent. However, I feel the role of Treasurer for BTUC requires other skills, as BTUC is an umbrella organisation for trade unions in the city. It is particularly important to have the ability to communicate and build up relationships with political officers, full-time officials and branch officers alike. An important part of the role is to encourage new affiliation and new delegates, especially young workers, to participate in BTUC's vibrant meetings. Team working is vital for the role of the BTUC. I have served on the EC last year, and I am aware that the EC made up of a group of talented and experienced individuals. We work together around developing strategy and policy. Of the BTUC each year, there is an important role for the Treasurer to forecast the cost of campaigns and strategic priorities to fulfill the wishes of both executives and delegate members. The Treasurer is often the public face of BTUC to trade unions across the city and TUCs across the West Midlands. So it is essential that correspondence is open, welcoming and comradely, with up-to-date records ready available to affiliate to delegates. I would welcome the opportunity to helping shape campaigns through the role and join with others to protect jobs and fight for better employment conditions in these challenging times. Trish Jones, North Birmingham Unite Community, WM 5114. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the next position is Equal Opportunities Officer. Any nominations to be carried forward to January?
Ian, can I make a statement as a candidate for the Treasurer?
Now, hold on.
No.
Well, we've just had one statement from one of the candidates. Surely you should do it to all the candidates.
Now, hold on.
You know what you've been doing?
Hold on. I've called Equal Opportunities Officer.
Well, we've just had a statement for
arguing
for the Treasurer. Surely, if there are other people wanting to stand for the position, you've got to have equality of thing. You know, this is not the Donald Trump thing. That we've got to have equality on these things. You know.
Well, I did call Equal Opportunities Officer. No. Hold on. Any nominations for the Equal Opportunities Officer? Anyone? No one? Okay, does Stuart want to make a statement for Treasurer then? Very quickly.
Yeah, just to say that I've been the Treasurer for many years, and obviously the role of the Treasurer is liaison and communication with affiliates to try to seek their involvement. It also involves managing some of the assets that we have. I don't know if people are aware, but because we held a union club and sold that for a big profit about 20 years ago, we have about nearly £60,000 with the Royal London, and obviously investing and managing taxation questions is also a question for the Treasurer, and I've had experience over 10, 20 years of doing that. We also have a very healthy balance. We have about 12,000 quid in our current account. So I think that for all the problems we've had, there has been a general good management of the financial structures, and so I'm just putting for myself forward. But if other people want other people, that's fine.
There are two contributions now to the Treasurer's position, but remember, any further speeches can be made at the AGM. Okay, noted. You have the right to speak at the AGM. Now, Equal Opportunities Officer, anyone? No one? Number 6, Anti-Racist Officer. Anyone? Okay, I have one nomination here to be carried forward to...
Anti-Racist Officer nomination from John Rafter, nominating Farheen Ahmed.
Okay.
John, can you put that in the email, please?
Yes, no problem, Noam.
Okay.
Any further nominations for Anti-Racist Officer? No. Number 7, Assistant Secretary. Any nominations, please?
I would like to nominate Joe Ward, please. I'll send the email already.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further nominations for the Assistant Secretary? No. Okay, can we now have nominations? No, not. These are 10 members for the Executive Committee. Okay.
Can I, for the 10 members, can I nominate Elliot Demuccio, UCU, Carl Jones, UCU, and Bradley Ward, UCU?
Yes. Put that in an email as well, please.
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay.
Ian, can I nominate Sarah Tavisham and myself for the executive?
Okay. Any further nominations?
Ian, can I nominate Martin Hoare?
Martin Hoare.
Yep. Thank you.
Any further nominations? Oh, Trish, yes, you're waving. And
Myself for the EC, please.
who?
Can I nominate myself for the EC?
Yeah, you can, yes, there's no problem there. That's Trish Jones, yes.
Again, put it in the email, please.
In the email, please, yes. Okay.
I'll put myself forward, Ian.
Okay. And Mark Shakespeare, yes. Richard, are you happy to not? Richard, can you unmute?
Yeah. Oh, damn.
Can you unmute, Richard? Richard, unmute.
Okay. Right. Sorry about that. Yes, self-nomination. I've sent you an email already.
That's okay, yeah. Yep. I'll go forward to January, yes.
Can I nominate John Rafter for committee member?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Ian,
yes.
I've got my hand up.
I'll send the email.
Hold on.
Thank you.
One at a time, please. One at a time. No.
Can you see I've got my hand up?
No, is that Catherine Christian?
Yes, yeah.
No, I can't see you at all.
I've done it in the, I've got it
No,
in the participants.
I can't see you. No.
Oh, right, hang on.
Yeah,
Can you see me
if
now?
I've got your.
I had my hand up virtually.
No, we see you now. We now see you.
Right.
And
Can I nominate Cathy Gaffney and myself for the committee?
Yep. Okay. No problem.
Great. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. And remember, elections will be in January.
Okay.
Could you put these things in the email, please, Kathy?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any further nominations? Self-nominations
Fletcher.
for? Yeah.
Graham Fletcher.
Yeah. Okay. Graham Fletcher, yes.
Is Stephen Booth wish to come back? Because I'd nominate Stephen. Is Stephen there?
Yeah, I'm here. Question:
Oh.
Are executive meetings going to be on Zoom or physical?
It's going to be Zoom at the moment.
Right, because if you remember, I had to drop off the executive committee due to basically just logistical problems of getting home at the end of the meeting because I finished so late.
Well, I think it probably will be for the foreseeable future on the Zoom.
Chair,
Okay.
Chair, can I just intervene there? Chair.
Yeah.
Graham Fletcher. Chair.
Okay, Graham.
If any help to Stephen Booth, I can take him out at the end of the meeting if he requires that.
Right, I live in Sheldon. It's just if they're in the city centre, it takes me a couple of hours to get home.
I think when I spoke to you earlier in the year, I thought you said Cheltenham. but the offer was still the same. Cheltenham or Sheldon.
Yeah, thank you. We'll burn that bridge when we come to it. But
no problem.
Yeah, I don't want to put my name forward and then I can't do it because of travel.
Well, you can now because the travel's sorted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, there is one further one from Pete Duffy, an executive member who's been very ill this year, but he'd like to come back on board. So again, the secretary has been notified of Pete Duffy's intention to stand. Any further nominations for executive position? No. Okay. Now, there is a request from the chair. Now, this can apply to an executive member or one of the delegates. Right? Quite simply, we're looking at someone who's prepared to take on the study of our archives. We have got quite a lot of boxes of archives, lots of printed material to go through. We need cataloguing and sorting. Now, if it's a delegate who's happy to do it, the executive may want a report once in a while, maybe just a few lines of where we are, or a spreadsheet of what we've got and date, time, and the place, etc. Or likewise, if it happens to be a volunteer from the executive, same thing, we'd appreciate a report. Now, is anyone like to come forward as a volunteer from the executive or delegate to be an archivist for the BTUC? We can hold this open. It's a purely voluntary position. Anyone? Darcy Luke?
Yeah, I'll volunteer. I work with archives in my research. I'm happy to try and go through some of those for you.
Okay, thank you, Darcy. Okay. Now remember, it's a voluntary position. So if you're a delegate, okay, it will be a voluntary position, yes. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Well done. Thank you, Darcy.
Thank you. We'll keep you informed anyway. Okay. That closes now.
Can I just ask? Sorry, is the nominations process closed here, or when's the date for it closing?
It's closed for tonight now, but obviously between now and January, if you want to make any further nominations, you can do. But all we ask is the people concerned must be aware of your nomination of them, and there must be a member of an affiliated trade union. Otherwise, those nominations may become null and void. We don't want, well, we'd rather avoid that situation. So it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that all the people put forward for the election are members of affiliated trade unions. Okay. Right.
Can I just ask a question as well, please?
Go
ahead.
So the email says ballots are going to be sent out to members. So my understanding is, looking at the Constitution, the ballot would take place at the AGM.
That's
So if the nominations don't close before the meeting, how are the ballots going to be sent out?
Yeah, the nominations will close before the end of this year.
Okay.
And the ballots paper.
So when you say before the end of this year, do you mean they just close on the 31st of December?
Well, I think ideally I would say they should close on the before Christmas.
Ian, can I just say, in terms of previous practice, the nominations are, unless there's vacancies, it closes this meeting.
Yeah, I know, but
So if there are, for instance, more than 10 people standing for the executive, that's the only nominations that are valid. If somebody hasn't not volunteered at all for the Equal Opportunities Officer, then that's an open nomination. You can take that in December and January, but you've got to close the nominations to be able to issue the ballot papers, you know. And the existing practice over many years, 30 years on,
Stuart, can I just
close at this meeting, you know.
Stuart, I think you should, before you speak, you should have read the Constitution. Constitution says nothing.
That's existing practice.
I don't know about existing practice. I can claim whatever is existing practice, but the Constitution does not say that. And also, I think under the current circumstances, it would be very difficult to close the affiliation today. So if people want to affiliate anybody, they can do so. And I would suggest that we close the affiliation by the 15th of December.
Can I ask a question?
Okay, Kathy Gaffney, yes.
Yeah, just assuming that we're going to have more people standing than there will be positions, should we be all writing a paragraph each or something about why we should be voted for?
I think that's a good idea.
Good idea. You're at liberty to do so. Okay.
If that paragraph is sent to me before, well, say by the end of November, it can go out in the notice for the December meeting to the delegates.
Okay. Yeah. Are we all done?
Yeah. So can I just confirm then, is this deadline of the 15th of December a hard deadline? Is that now the deadline, or was that a suggestion?
I would say that should be the hard deadline because I've got to, you know, collate everything.
So the deadline for nominations and affiliations is the 15th of December?
Well, the affiliation can actually remain until the
end of the year. Okay.
End of the year.
Can you give the date of the AGM as well?
It's the first Thursday in January.
No, that'd be Thursday, the 7th of January, for the AGM. Okay. Oh. Okay. Now we're all done, are we? Can we now move on to our third speaker, please? Can we have Dr. Melanie Cruz, please, from the UCU? Melanie?
Yes, hello. Hello, everybody. Thank you for staying.
Hello.
Yeah, I will ask people if they can mute themselves, so there is no many voices at the same time. So I appreciate that if you can mute yourself now. So yeah, thank you everybody for staying in the second rounds of discussion. My name is Melanie Cruz. I am a member of UCU, University of Birmingham branch. And I worked at Birmingham for 5 years as a casualized worker, as a teaching fellow. And I lost, well, my contract ended last June, and due to the current situation, I was not rehired and I'm unemployed at this as we speak. But saying that, giving that introduction, I want to speak a little bit about the current situation that we live in at higher education in the UK. I will mainly focus on the two or the three issues I think are more relevant at this point, but we can expand a little bit further if you have any other questions. There's also some other comrades in this meeting. They are from UCU, as you saw already, and they can also answer some of the questions I will guess. So I really want to focus in the issue about health and safety, and then on the issue of workload and causalization, which is kind of explain my own situation as well. So during summer, and to put this a little bit on a context, during summer, universities decided that we will go at the beginning of the academic year. So September, universities will be open, and they will be conducting face-to-face teaching. These kind of raised concerns in UCU at a national level, but also locally, because we were not sure how universities was going to deal with health and safety for staff and also for students. Considering that moving thousands of students across the country was already a quite bad decision in the middle of a pandemic, when the main recommendation is to have the less possible social interactions. So that's what the situation. Management from all universities in the UK decided that implementing basic measures such as social distancing, wearing masks in classrooms, or ventilation, for example. I guess you're familiar with the video that the Vice Chancellor of the University of Birmingham did with this mask being good marketing for the university. But UCU from the very, very beginning knew that it was a very serious concern, that none of these measures were going to actually stop the spread. In fact, as we all know, being in interaction for over an hour is, even if you wear a mask, even if you are in ventilated space, you still have high possibility of spread. And we're talking about a population that is quite young in large majority, because they're students, and they can carry the virus being asymptomatic. So all those factors were considered by UCU when they assessed the situation before the academic year started. But management didn't listen. There was not a very smooth conversation between the two sides. And since then, we have seen an increase of cases across the country. I guess the most emblematic ones you have seen in the news is the situation in Manchester, where like thousands of students have got the virus. They've been trapped in student accommodations and so on. In the case of Birmingham University, that is the case I know more closely. There's been over 1,000 cases since the beginning of the academic year among students and staff. This is, I think, way over the average nationally in terms of infection. Therefore, our branch is being concentrated into negotiate with the university to go to face-to-face, to go to online teaching only, so we can protect staff and students. But it's been so far not much of like a good negotiation process. Staff continue to do face-to-face teaching, despite the fact that students are falling like flies, sick every week. We listened. I mean, there is a quite fluid communication among staff in different departments and schools, and we see situations in which lecturers are having no students to teach face-to-face anymore because they all are isolating or sick. So under that scenario, universities or management are responding in a quite unusual way, because they are saying that basically spread of the virus is not happening on campus, but because the measurements they put in are working, so therefore they don't have to take the step forward of going online. This, of course, is not just irresponsible from a scientific point of view. As we all know, there is no one way to trace where you got the infection from, but also is a lack of social responsibility from the university, not just at Birmingham, but across the country, of not understanding that universities belong to the communities that interact around the university. So for example, Selly Oak area, at Baxton, we're seeing a rise of infections in those places too, because it's obviously the population is as many students, and they interact in any other spaces like supermarkets and restaurants and so on with the rest of the Birmingham community. So this lack of social responsibilities that universities are lacking is one of the main concerns that UCU has at this point in terms of health and safety. Of course, the union has done a big assessment in every building. They have done an incredible work and quite hard work actually during the past months to assess the risk of that of staff and students. And they've been working closely with management as well to continue that communication that permit the safety of everybody. But because management hasn't listened well the concerns of staff, UCU is moving into some actions as we speak, and I will mention that toward the end of this presentation. But the second issue I wanted to address is in terms of how the coronavirus crisis have expanded already existing problems in the university as workload and causalization. We were on strike, as you probably remember, before just before the pandemic. I guess the last week of strike was the week before we went to lockdown. I remember that. And that strike was about the similar issues we're seeing today, that is extreme overwork by permanent members of staff and non-permanent members of staff, but also causalization, like people like me, we are in short-term contracts and we are normally rehired every year, creating this current situation in which a large portion of the younger academics or non-academic staff were not rehired this year, and they are unemployed or working in very precarious conditions, in very short-term contracts or hourly paid, etc. This, of course, is not new for higher education. We have seen this phenomenon happening for years, but because of this crisis, universities are claiming to have been in a financial crisis. This on the basis of having less students, which is being confirmed not to be entirely true, because there is actually more students coming to university this year, but are now sustaining on the idea that there will be a student exodus toward, like, during the Christmas period, because students don't really want to continue this type of blind teaching, or they can't really handle going to university during a pandemic. So all these sort of reasons from management have cut funding for teaching support and basically overloading permanent members of staff with all the teaching and support of students. Obviously expanding serious mental health issues, stress, fear of redundancy, etc. So that's kind of like the broad situation we're in. It's all quite interconnected with the issues we have seen in the past. I guess what we can conclude, what has been the conclusion of BUCU, I guess, is that everything we're facing today with the COVID-19 crisis has to do with how universities have been managed in the last 10, 15 years. And what are the actions or the step forwards for this? At the moment, different universities every branch is taking different actions. Some universities have moved entirely online, which is a good sign, but because government is not closing universities during this second lockdown and is not forcing universities to go fully online, and there is cases like Birmingham in which face-to-face teaching continued to happen. So the Birmingham branch is actually having a consultative ballot to take to see if members want to if they want to take some action next year, which will be basically move everything online, continue their regular work, but from home and not going to campus, which will be the main concern at the moment. So that's happening now. The ballots came out, I think, yesterday or the day before yesterday, and because of the current situation, we're seeing way more engagement from members and new members with the union, which is actually quite good news. And this means that we're expecting high participation in this ballot, and hopefully it will be decided before Christmas. So any action taken will be seen next year, in which we will obviously ask for the solidarity of the Trade Council and the other unions, which kind of reflect on the same situation that other comrades we're talking today, that is still extending to this sector. So I think that's all more or less I have to say. Again, if you have any questions, you can ask over the chat or ask me. And as well, we have David, we have Carl, we have Elio, who are also members of UCU here that can answer some of the questions as well. Thank you.
No, thank you, Melanie, for the excellent contribution. Okay, I'll now take questions. Now, please raise your hand clearly. Okay, there's two so far on the first screen. Okay, first one is Mary Wilkins. Mary. Second one, John.
Thank you very much, Mel, for a very clear description of what's happening at University of Birmingham. And I presume there are similar attacks in the other city universities, Birmingham City, and further education colleges like the South and City College, which is also part of Bourneville. And this is clearly an assault on working conditions, on health and safety of staff, teaching and non-teaching, and of students. And I wondered, given that this situation is escalating, whether we might have a working group, a kind of subgroup of the Trades Council to liaise between University and College Union, Unison, which organises a lot of non-teaching staff, and also involves the further education colleagues, because this is not something that affects individual institutions. It's the same battle and the same fight and the same need for support across unions and across institutions. And I wonder what Mel thinks about that, and whether it might be a useful way forward if we're now talking about action, including maybe strike action. Thank you.
Melanie?
Right now or after all the questions, Ian?
Okay, okay, then. Next question will be John O.
It's not a question, it's a contribution on the subject. While everybody's concentrating on COVID, once again, hospitals are turning away people who are scheduled for elective surgery. And that's surgery which is scheduled in advance, and also semi-elective surgery that must be designed to preserve a patient's life. In the last 3 months, the number of cancer patients who have died because they haven't got the elective surgery has gone up something like 10%. And even routine stuff, once again, like blood tests, etc., which are detecting illnesses that may be onset in children and older people, is not being done. And these illnesses, if detective, can be cured, can be dealt with quite easily. But if they're not, it ends up with the people needing palliative care, long-term care. So I say, once again, it's a health and safety issue, but once again, hospitals are turning away people who should be going to hospital.
Okay. Melanie, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. I will. So what Mary was saying, I think that's a great idea. I think one of the reasons why I want to get involved in the Trade Council is because we, I mean, the overwork of staff is just not. It's also a problem of the unions being completely overworked. I think we need to build form of networking in which we can support ourselves in different branches, because I guess I can't speak for the in the executive, but I can see how much work they've been doing this month. So that will be actually quite interesting to do, and I'll be happy to move forward with an initiative like that, in terms of having a working group. That sounds great. In terms of like what John was mentioning, I think is so important, because yes, we're talking about people getting infected with this virus, but that's actually not just the only health concern that staff are having at the moment. We have loads of staff with chronic conditions that they fear for their life to go on campus. We also have people who have been suffering with long COVID, which is already a condition, a sort of certificate condition, which have, you can be young, you can be healthy, where you can have all the ticking boxes, but if you got COVID 6 months ago, you might still be sick. And increasing the number of cases and areas around the university by young people is going to will continue to make the NHS to collapse, as we are already seeing with this second lockdown. So the pressure is on government at the moment of like moving every university to online teaching. And here I want to address Stephen's question on the chat, and I see the concern. Like I'm from social sciences, so I think for us it's easy to go online, but universities, especially University of Birmingham, that have so many resources, is such a rich university, have the means to actually support students from STEM areas in the medical school, engineering, and so on. There's ways of going online and reducing the contact on campus. Perhaps a solution will be having some of those face-to-face teaching in some cases that is absolutely necessary. But the majority of subjects can actually go online, and there is no excuse for universities to keep them to keep this face-to-face contact.
Can I ask a question?
Ian, I don't know if you've seen my hand up.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. I got my hand up on the screen, sir.
Now, hold on. Melanie, have you finished the first two answers? Okay. Mike Shakespeare, then Kathy Gaffney. Mike first.
Right, Melanie, is there any growth in agency work within inside the university, only self-employment and 0 hours contracts? Are people now, because we know this creates so much insecurity within inside the workplace, and I wonder what's happening at Birmingham University. Are you able to answer that?
Yes. For what I mean, I'm in a bit of an awkward position because I was very active in my branch over the years, but now I'm unemployed. So I'm still interacting with my comrades in the branch, but I am not seeing the whole process. But I do have gathered the sense that there is way more engagement in the branch. We have actually lots of members working in the committee, and especially casualized members and younger academics or PhD students, which is interesting because those in more precarious conditions are the ones who are stepping up to get involved in the union and mobilizing people to engage, which is not the common, is becoming the most common thing in at least in our sector. I think that those in precarious conditions are the ones that are more active. But I think this situation is increasing, like the members. I would love to ask Carl if actually we have more members now, but I'm not sure. But I know nationally the numbers are going up.
Okay, thank you. Kathy Gaffney?
Yes, I'd like to support what Mary Wilkins was suggesting, and I think what's needed is some proper, countering of what the management are saying. I'll refer again to this film because it makes clear that employers have, as with what Melanie said about the university, have been saying, oh, it's all to do with the community, and it hasn't been publicized that workplaces and education between them have a huge are a huge source of the coronavirus, much bigger than anything else, and it's being allowed to the myth, employers who have huge numbers of coronavirus cases have been saying, oh, it's all because people have been mixing in the smoking areas or giving each other lifts and all the rest of it, and it can't possibly account for that. I think there's so much important stuff in this film. I'd like to suggest that perhaps it even go on the BTUC website. I certainly put a link to it onto the BTUC Facebook already, and I think that's some of the stuff that needs countering and getting across to people.
Yeah, I just want to agree that, I mean, it will be excellent to hear what is the situation at colleges and schools, because although the situations and conditions are different, I think people coming together will be a good opportunity to discuss these issues. So I will leave it there because I know we have another speaker.
Okay, yeah. There's one question from Richard Thatcher. Do you want to handle that one? Melanie, there's one question from Richard Thatcher.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to raise a different aspect of universities, and that is what their role is in the politics of the city. Because they all claim some sort of commitment to Birmingham. And I think it's worth looking at what it is. And I'll just give quickly some examples. Take climate. The council has declared a climate emergency. It's set up a task force. It's got representatives of various organisations. I'm on it, but it's also got a strong representation from the 3 universities. I haven't heard any of them say anything radical or really critical about either the council or really the government's policies on climate. Their line in general is, we're all in this together, to quote Richie earlier, rather than recognising that there are profound class conflicts over dealing with the climate emergency. Second example, if you look at the council's policies, for example, on housing or health or social care, where are the radical critiques of these from the universities? I think they're very thin on the ground. Actually, I think it compares not well with places like Manchester, for example, or education, which I know well. It's got clever academics there who turn out lots of radical articles and books nationally, but I don't know, and I've been campaigning on education in this city for 20 years, I don't know of any of them who've got involved in the campaigns over academies, for example, or grammar school, getting rid of grammar schools in the city. And I contrast this with, for example, Sheffield Hallam, where a group of academics work closely with Sheffield Trades Council. So I'm very glad that now some UCE members from the universities have joined this or been put forward to go on the EC, because I think there's a real need to use the skills and abilities of people at the university to work with the working class movement in the city.
Richard, Melanie, do you want to answer that one? Want to reply?
I mean, I just can agree with Richard. Yes, there is a lack of social responsibility from universities, and we need to be more on top of what is happening and the interactions we have with the city, in not just during this crisis, but in general. So yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. If you can all on mute, please, and give a round of applause to Melanie for the excellent contribution and replies to the answers.
Yeah, very good.
Now, we need to move on now. Time's now running short. Our fourth and final speaker will be Alex Marshall on the Courier's dispute. Alex?
Hey, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure to join this meeting and listen to the various different struggles and how people are reacting with such unity and defiance against, this situation as, companies, employers are using the pandemic as a smokescreen to kind of make these cuts and all these different things. And it is inspirational to be amongst people who are not taking this lying down. So I appreciate that. I thought I would start very briefly, just giving a brief introduction on myself and the IWGB. I'm not sure how many of you are kind of aware of the IWGB, so I will start there. So we're basically a small trade union that has emerged over the last decade. We largely represent kind of precarious workers, largely from like the gig economy. You've got private hire drivers, we have couriers like myself, cleaners, security guards, a lot of the workers who are migrants, very low paid, very precarious, very underrepresented. And, we have formed a union off the back of these people, and we are fighting back, and we are getting some incredible wins for these very precarious, low paid workers. One of which actually just happened yesterday. I'm not sure if you saw it, it was kind of in the Guardian and other bits of press, but at the University of London, there was this huge end outsourcing campaign, which involved the cleaners, which was actually where the IWGB spawned from, organising these cleaners, trying to get them brought in-house. And after 8 years, maybe even more of struggle, they have finally been brought in-house. So these are low-paid cleaners who have really had resilience and unity for such a long time. And this week they've started as employees. So they now have the security of being employees. So it's a really inspirational story. That's one of the first fights that started at the IWGB, but obviously since then there have been many. We now represent foster care workers, games workers. We've just formed a yoga teachers branch. So a lot of people emerging from the current business model of bogus self-employment and all these things are coming to the IWGB to try and kind of get a foothold and some sort of security in their workplace. So moving on from there, a bit of an introduction on myself. So my name's Alex. I am currently the branch chair of the Couriers branch. I don't have a trade union background. My kind of journey to joining a trade union was one that was signposted by exploitation. I started as a courier 8 years ago, thinking this is a flexible job, it's outdoors, it always looks quite fun. Within quite a short amount of time, I realized that it was riddled with exploitation, that flexibility was completely bogus. I was sat there one Christmas Eve working away while most of my friends were kind of off work and having time off. And I sort of looked back at the year and thought, I've actually worked more days than all of my friends, had less time off than all of my people who I think of as employees and having no freedom and that kind of stuff. And I'm meant to be self-employed. I'm meant to be the one who's choosing when I get to work. And that's when the penny really dropped, that I realized that, the industry was completely broken, and I started to really push back. So from things such as low pay, lack of security, all these kind of things, I started to organize in my workplace. A medical company, a multi-million-pound medical company that had an in-house courier fleet. We organized there. We managed to get one of the first trade union recognition agreement in the gig economy. We managed to win LIMBY worker status. So all these couriers who hadn't had securities for 25 years We won holiday pay, we won pensions, you know, we won pay rises. We've had a couple of really big strikes, all sorts of wins under that roof. And that's kind of where I am now. And similar to Richie, actually, recently back in June, my company managed to use the pandemic as a smokescreen, and they made me redundant. They said that this is a medical company that was getting private contracts from the government, that were involved with the track and trace and all of these kind of COVID testing. One of the few industries that is profiting off the back of this pandemic turned around to me and 9 others, most of whom were active union members, and said, oh, we simply don't have the money. We're going to have to let 10 of you go. So I went through a 30-day redundancy process. We caused them absolute hell. It even resulted in a picket outside their headquarters in Sydney that we managed to organise and get a whole load of comrades to go outside and make some noise on the other side of the planet. So although I ended up without a job at the end of it, it was humbling the amount of support that we got from it. And, you know, I think they regretted it. We'll be taking them to tribunal, and I'm sure we'll probably win on terms of whistleblowing, trade union detriment, and all these other things as well. So I will get my closure. And where I am now, I've been organising since I've been made redundant, helping loads of couriers. And I've also had the privilege that there's been a bit of a reshuffle in the union. And as of Monday, if our AGM goes to plan over the weekend, I'll become the president of the IWGB. So a real privilege, and I've been very fortunate that the journey has kind of had the ups and downs and has taken me in this direction, which is super exciting. Onto the kind of careers beyond my own experience in the industry. You know, the courier industry is one that is notorious for the gig economy. Okay, so it's, you know, it's the same as private hire drivers, the gig economy, which is a pandemic in itself. It's creeping into various different industries, and it needs to be stopped. And that's what we're doing as a branch, and as some of the other branches of the union, we're pushing back against the gig economy. We've had successes in some of the household names, such as, you know, City Sprint, eCourier, these ones that we see buzzing around, picking up conventional kind of packages. We're also organising amongst Deliveroo couriers, Uber Eats couriers, Just Eat. A lot of these people who've been determined as key workers during the pandemic. A lot of our couriers have continued to work throughout in the most adverse conditions. And we are fighting back. We've had series of boycotts, strikes, all these kind of things. And we are starting to really shake up these multinational, multi-million-pound companies. Strategies from on the ground organising to really using this attention with the press as a device to push back against these companies. Also doing a lot of research into investor strategy and really putting pressure on the investors to then put the pressure on these companies as well. So it's this kind of nutcracker technique of putting the pressure on all around these companies because they are just so big. They're so big and so rich. You know, gone are the days where just a big picket might be enough to kind of topple a company. These companies have spread so far around the world now that the amount of pressure we have to exert from a load of workers who, you know, even going on strike over the course of an evening can be enough to put them in destitution, to be enough to tip them into having to go to a food bank. It's incredibly hard to organise these workers. However, we are seeing great hope and great optimism. So one of the reasons that I'm here tonight is partly because of action that happened locally to you guys. In Wolverhampton, we recently had a successful boycott, 2 days of the couriers self-organising with my assistance, but not properly affiliated yet to the IWGB because we've only got a few members amongst the Wolverhampton, but I helped them organise and have a 2-day boycott of McDonald's. So the way this kind of works is that obviously these guys are working through an app to organise a strike or a picket is quite hard, but the way they can kind of target and continue to work is they would just reject jobs from specific restaurants over the course of an evening. So by doing that, you're targeting one of the big partners, you're targeting them because they're complicit in the exploitation. And it means that also these low paid workers can continue to earn, but they can still use that leverage of these big companies to hit, you know, Uber Eats or Deliveroo while they do this. So they had success there. We've gained a few more members there, and I'm looking forward to. I was actually meant to be coming up to Wolverhampton to talk to a load of those drivers, but I had to go for a COVID test because I had a sore throat and ended up having to self-isolate until that test came through negative. So that was unfortunate, but I am looking forward to coming up locally to Birmingham and Wolverhampton sometime soon. So yeah, back to the kind of branch and what we're doing in response to the precarious way these guys are employed. So we're currently kicking off a campaign, and the basis of the campaign sort of, epitomizes how awful the situation is at the moment, as the focus of the campaign is literally just trying to fight for a fair process around terminations. These guys are terminated at the click of a button, terminated meaning fired. They can be accused of it not being them who went to a house when it is them. They could be accused of being late on a job when they've been hit off their bike. They can be accused of all sorts of things. They have no chance to appeal. They have no chance to have representation. They're literally just click of a button. They can't log on, and that's their earnings gone. So we're launching a campaign around getting a fair process. So these guys get the chance to appeal, to the chance to prove their innocence, and the chance to continue working. And hopefully after we've won that, we can kick on and start to push for other things. But we had to choose something that we felt like all the couriers could get behind. Okay, so over the next few months, I've been speaking to the MP, Ian Byrne, up in Liverpool, who's an absolute inspiration, who said he's going to table a motion as an EDM. And then we're going to have a huge letter writing campaign to get loads of MPs on board. The more MPs we get putting their name to the EDM, the more of a story it becomes, and then the more pressure that will put on the likes of Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and the other companies. So it's a strategy. I mean, a lot of these EDMs, they don't even get discussed in Parliament, but it's a way of kind of using that as a hook to then get press around it, to put that pressure on these companies. So keep your eyes peeled. I mean, we've had some great interactions with the Birmingham MPs. They've been fantastic at stepping up and writing letters to these companies to support members who've been terminated in Birmingham, which has been fantastic. It's been really good to see those local MPs, to you guys, actually stepping in and doing what they're meant to do and supporting these low paid workers. So we're looking forward to those guys hopefully supporting the EDM. The more names we get on it, the more pressure on the company. Then we have various things lined up, from boycotts to strikes to submitting worldwide complaints against these companies, investor alerts, all sorts of stuff to keep really troubling these companies and turning the screw and forcing them to treat these riders, as the key workers and the people that have been applauded by the nation, as they deserve. These guys are incredibly hardworking. They work under really adverse conditions. There aren't many jobs that you go into on a daily basis and there is a genuine risk that you could have a life-changing injury or even lose your life while you're doing it. So these guys, I mean, at the very least, they deserve a fair process. They deserve fair pay and they deserve respect. And that's what, as a branch, we're campaigning towards. And we've got some pretty radical ideas as to how we're going to make sure that happens. So watch this space, keep an eye on our social media. I can keep in touch with you guys and let you know how this story unravels. Keep your eyes peeled for how you can kind of write to your MPs or write letter writing campaigns and all sorts of ways that we've sort of had to think of how people can support us during these tough times and how people can make support virtually. I'm also happy to discuss these if anyone ever needs ideas of how you can sort of shake people up in your own workplaces, with UCU and organising. I know it's incredibly hard at the moment, but we've had to think on the spot of ways to really cause some damage from afar, and we've had some success. So yeah, I would absolutely love to talk to you. Thank you so much once again for having me.
Well done, Alex. Hi. Chair.
Ian, you're on mute.
Chair.
Okay, Graham Fletcher, yes.
Yeah. This is a message to Alex, really. Alex, very well done. I'm a trade unionist officer and can be retired for 52 years. I know where you've been. I've walked in your shoes. It's difficult. You're doing marvellous work. Just from me, well done and good luck. And we're always here for you.
Yeah, Alex, you can rely on the support of the Birmingham TUC as well. Now, is there any other question for Alex?
Yeah, Ian, could I just say something, please? It's Jay.
No. Well, yes, you'll be on shortly. Yes, it's a question for Alex.
Well, I just wanted to say because I wasn't going to say anything, but I just wanted to say it was really fantastic to listen to you, Alex. And the one thing that absolutely came out of all the wonderful bits of what you were saying, because there's a myth, isn't there, about, because you were talking about some of the people that are in the union and the demographic that it represents, because there's a myth, isn't there, that migrants come and they undercut wages, and actually what you've described tonight is people coming to this country and actually helping to lift the conditions of workers around them. And I just wanted to underline that point, really. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Yes, I thought you were going to make a contribution afterwards. Sorry, my fault. Okay, Kathy Gaffney.
Yeah, I'd just like Alex to spell out what would be a good thing to say to an MP, either our personal ones or getting on to our trade union MPs to do.
So I think the main thing at the moment is going to be to support this early day motion. Like, that's what they can do. You know, like I said, I mean, your local MPs in Birmingham have been incredibly supportive, and I'm sure they will get involved and support this EDM. But yeah, when you do speak to them and when you do write to them, you know, point to the gig economy, point to this, you know, I don't mean to use the term pandemic, you know, loosely, but it has been infecting the way people have been employed for a long time now, and it is creeping into other industries, and it does need to be stopped, because this is what generations will have to put up with. You know, people's lives being defined by algorithms and, you know, multi-million-pound CEOs sat behind desks and sort of creating clever ways to manipulate people and destroy their lives at the click of a button. And we just really need to push back on it and fight back against it. And I just wanted to say, with what Jay said as well, is just so true about the migrant workforce, that, you know, not just the migrant workforce, but these kind of, what these people represent are a body of people who have been told relentlessly by the Tory government over the last kind of decade that they're unskilled, that they're disposable, that they have this drummed into them. And what the pandemic has shown is that, you know, these people might not have the qualifications other people do. But, you know, while, you know, the majority of the population was staying safe at home, these people were still pounding the streets, and they were still picking up supplies and bringing them to people's front doors, who were self-isolating or who were at high risk, and people who were staying alive. And we've heard people being infected. We've heard people dying, you know, private hire drivers dying who've been infected with COVID. And, you know, these people have literally been putting their lives on the line while their companies still look to kind of cut the costs, drive down the wages, you know, oversupply and unknown demand. And it is just absolutely horrendous how these people are being treated. So we will, I see someone's asking for the EDM number. It hasn't been tabled yet, so we don't have the number, but I'll be sure to share it with you guys when we do, and you guys can activate. And if people have social media, you can follow us on that. I can share that down at the bottom.
Okay, thanking Alex for the excellent contribution and replies to the answers. Time is now running extremely short. We have one announcement from Doug Morgan. Doug?
Yeah, I'll be quick. I'm a delegate from the National Education Union. Time's running out, but to be honest, this meeting could go on all night. There's so much struggle that is in this meeting. It's one of the best Trades Council meetings I've ever been to be honest. And I think it does show that there's a lot of people hurting through COVID, but there are people that are fighting back. And so what I was going to do is announce it's been in the chat once or twice, but the local launch for the People Before Profit emergency programme. And really what it is try to bring some of that together to try and populate an idea that we don't have to just accept crap because that's what the employers want to put down on us. And to be honest, it'd be quite good if all of the speakers tonight came and joined the raft of speakers that will be here as well. There's a whole number of Labour left speakers that are going to be out. Andrew Scattergood, 2 Birmingham councillors. So there's something happening, but we really want to stow it out with as much of a fight back as possible. And so there's stuff in the chat on how to join, but what we want is people to take ownership of it and go on the offensive over this, so that we can say people's lives have to come before profit, but build that movement in whatever way we can to do it. So there's so much inspiration from this meeting. We want that in the 16th of November. We want people to take the sort of program and run with it, to try and join people up across sectors and all the rest of it, to say we're not going to pay that price. So if people can sign up and come along, that would be good. If people want to speak at it, that's good. If people want to get other people come along, that's good. But I think it is about trying to populate the idea that we don't just have to accept it. And so stuff's in the chat. Please come along. Please share it. Get branches and that lot to back it.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Richard Hatcher.
Yeah.
Richard.
Thanks. Next Thursday, we have a special Trades Council meeting on the climate emergency. And I put the details just now in the chat, but it's from 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock as usual. And I expect people know that the council has declared a climate emergency well over a year ago. And it's at last come up with a sort of plan at the September council meeting. This was strongly attacked by people who said it was too slow, too weak, and there was no participation in it. And they were absolutely right. The council's supposed to come back with another plan, a better plan, at the council meeting in January. And so our meeting on the climate emergency, and in particular, a just transition for jobs and communities, will help us to develop the case we want to make. We've got some good speakers. We got Liam Byrne, and he's standing for West Midlands Mayor. His manifesto has got some good policies for green jobs. But also, the mayor has important powers, for example, over transport in the city and over adult learning. So it's really important that we get rid of Andy Street and get somebody better. Lisa Trickett is speaking. She's the councillor who has been most effective in challenging the council's hopeless so-called emergency plan, including standing up and doing so in the council meeting and organising the council a call to action. We've got a lot of support from trade unions as well as climate activists, and forced the council to back down on key issues. We've got Lamar Campbell, who's a student at Aston University, Labour activist, and obviously young people are absolutely key to the whole climate issue. We've got Ravi Subramanian. Some of you will know him. He's the West Midlands Regional Secretary of Unison. And I think, apart from the fact his own background actually is in the whole energy issue, but his union represents so many of those workers in public services whose value has now been realised much better because of COVID. Most of them women, and it's really important that they're part of the whole climate debate and our solution to it. We've got Jules Todd, and again, some of you will know him. He's spoken at Trades Council meetings. He's a leading activist in Climate Action Network West Midlands and in the whole climate activist network in the West Midlands. And he's been a strong voice in the task force meetings as well as outside them. And finally, we're hoping that Howard Beckett will be able to attend. He said he wants to, but he's not able to confirm at the moment whether he can. He's the United Assistant General Secretary. And of course, his union represents so many of those workers in manufacturing, transport, construction, waste disposal, energy, and so on, who are going to be most affected, not just by COVID, but by combination with the changing local economy that we face, with new green jobs being created, but the risk also of workers paying the price in sectors of the economy which are high carbon. So really good meeting, lots of time to discussion, 7 o'clock, same place, same time, same chair. Hope to see you there.
Okay. Now, I will be generous tonight. Stuart, can you make it very, very quick, please?
Right. Thank you, Ian. Everybody's been appalled by the suspension of Jeremy Corbyn, and therefore the issue of Palestine, which was one of the issues that he was attacked over, is important to discuss. I have put it on the chat, but next Wednesday, Birmingham Stop the War Coalition is collaborating with the Shia Muslim Society for a discussion on Palestine and the Israeli apartheid state at 7 o'clock to 9. If anybody hasn't seen the list, can they, the ID numbers, can they email me at scr14@btinternet.com, and I'll send them the ID and password. Thanks.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, it's been a very good discussion tonight, good meeting, compliments all round to all and everyone for attending and contributing the way you have done. But sadly, time is now up. Under the current COVID crisis, I won't wish you a safe journey home. I'll just wish all of you a safe night in. And see you all very soon. Good night, all.
Hmm.